What's up, everybody? Tonight we've got a very full house to discuss the XFL Week 9 and USFL Week 1 action that we just saw this weekend. In my opinion, it's one of the greatest weekends to ever happen in spring football history. I'm sure most of you guys feel the same. Tonight we're joined by a couple different people. We've got Andy Paul Murray, Wheel of the Wheelhouse podcast. He's also the ride or die of the Markcast and XFL USFLNewsHub.com writer. We've also got Christian of Pure Sports Productions and Mibs of Worst 10 I'm Out, and then also my regular co-hosts Krish and Michael Washington. How you guys all doing tonight?
Good. Doing pretty good tonight.
Doing great. I'm doing my best to be camouflage in the background. So I've debated also wearing a white mask. Maybe that would work as well. Like a ski mask, but not black, just white instead.
I should have done it with the glasses so we only see the glasses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. It would have been perfect.
Yeah. At least you don't have window stickers behind you.
No, not yet. There's I was wondering about those. Are they from a kid's birthday party or something, or what's going on?
Yeah, they're from my daughters.
Oh,
I got two. I got 3 of them, and we had a little thing. They put them on the windows. So
there you go.
How lovely.
You gotta represent the kids, right?
Of course, absolutely. I'm a father first. Girl, absolutely. Dad, all 3 girls. Surrounded. Help me, somebody.
That's awesome. So no football players in that house is what you're saying.
My youngest might actually end up. She is a little tank, but nice. She's a little bit of a sissy. So I gotta kind of get that out of her first.
There you go. Maybe someday. That was my problem too. That's why I don't play.
That's a joke. Oh, what, you're a sissy?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, okay. All right.
But we'll get back to the XFL because I'm sure nobody wants to hear about my Pee Wee football career that lasted all of a week. Anyway, we'll start with the first game of the weekend, which obviously was the Vegas Vipers at the Houston Roughnecks. This was kind of a big game given the playoff considerations that were in favor of Houston if they won, and if not, if they lost. And Vegas brought them to task. I mean, they ended up bringing them, basically within 7 points of a victory. At times, it looked like Vegas could be good. At times, it looked very bad. Andy, I heard one of your takes earlier today on the Markcast, so I wanted to start with you. What were your thoughts on Vegas's performance today?
Well, I thought they had all of the intentions to be victorious, and then spontaneously they decided to press the self-destruct button about midway through the third quarter. Look, this has been the same song and dance for this team all year long. Great potential, great playmakers, receivers, running backs. Jalen McClendon has looked like the best starter of the entire group that they've had all season long. They have all of the right components, the ingredients, everything to win these ball games, and they just can't put people away. And they couldn't put a team away that had been struggling mightily on offense, that being the Houston Roughnecks. 2 horrendous turnovers for touchdowns in the span of about a quarter that just kind of sunk them and really put them behind the 8 ball the rest of the game and really breathed new life into the Houston squad. Then suddenly Houston started being able to run the ball. They get Bryce Moline out there. They get Max Borghi factored in there. They kind of get away from Brandon Silvers, who's just been in a funk himself. It was a disaster, and it's been a disaster this entire season. And alluding to the thing that I mentioned this morning on the Markcast, I'm starting to have some real questions about the longevity of Coach Rod Woodson. I know he was trumpeted as being a player first coach, and being able to hold himself in a high regard as far as his pedigree, as far as his ability to come in and try to be a leader among men. It just hasn't worked. He's gotten in constant verbal altercations with referees. He's talked down to officials. The game planning has not been there, especially in the second half of games. I mean, that St. Louis game, they had that fake field goal attempt that just got blown up completely. Every time they seem to try to take a risk, it's miscalculated. I'm really starting to wonder about the ability to kind of continue his program here, at least for this season. It just has not worked whatsoever. And we can maybe get into this a little bit later, but I just look at it across the way versus someone like Anthony Becht, who also is a player-first head coach. But the way he runs his operation is just so markedly different than what we've seen from Coach Woodson this entire season. So I don't know, just more of the same for Vegas. It's a shame because they have such high potential. They could have easily been in this North race, and that's saying a lot because the North division is tough. It's nails trying to get to that division, but they could have been right there. And I just think it's the same result it's been all season, just missed opportunities.
100%. Krish, I know you're a big Vegas fan. I wanted to get your take on that. What would you think if Vegas made a coaching change after the season?
See, man, I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, I love Rod. I think he's new, he's a first-year head coach. Like, there's growing pains. But I also think, like, you know how I feel about Jalen McClendon, right? Like, he's, in my opinion, the most talented quarterback in the league. I'm not just saying that because he's with the Vipers. Like, I truly believe that he's an NFL quarterback. If he turned over the ball once in 2 weeks starting, like, there's no other quarterback that had done that other than Jordan Tamahu. So I really feel like getting Rod back for another year would be good for them, because if it stay the same, maybe get a new offensive coordinator. But I think Ray Sherman has done a great job. I think the only thing you need to correct is the defense. Once you get that figured out, I think you'll be on your way, to be honest.
That's fair. Michael, you look like you've got something to say.
Gosh.
I just want to chime in real quick here. I wonder what the relationship between Rod Woodson as the head coach is and his assistants, because I feel like a lot of the other debuting professional head coaches in the league, like Anthony Becht or Reggie Barlow, like, they have guys around him that they trust and they actually put their trust into him. And I almost feel like Rod Woodson's not doing that with Vegas. And I honestly think that this season has been more of a disappointment for Chris Dishman. I'm highly more disappointed in Chris Dishman because, as the defensive coordinator who I fell in love with last year in the USFL, he's really struggled to close games out in the second half, especially defensively. Like, I don't think the offense has been as big of an issue. They've had a few games where they sputtered and stuff, but overall, I feel like it's the defense that has let them down. It's the defense that has gone to great lengths to shoot themselves in the foot at times. I mean, whether it's self-inflicted or not, they have not closed, especially in second halves. Like, Andy was saying in the third quarter, they're just a self-implosion again, and they let this game get away from them. And to me, I know chaos starts from the top to the bottom. I just hope that it's inexperience from Rod, and that this offseason they can build upon it. I don't think a coaching change should be needed after year one. Give him at least a second year, just because this is a new league. But I am very curious as to what the dynamic is there, because I feel like something's off. I mentioned it 3 weeks ago on the show, Sam, that I feel like something was off with there compared to some of these other rookie head coaches. And I think it's the relationship between head coach to assistant.
It's very possible, and I actually kind of wonder, I mean, how big of an influence do you think Rod Woodson has on that defense? Mibbs, it sounded like you had something you wanted to say. I'm not sure if you heard me, but no big deal. We'll move on. Mibbs, if you got something, man, just let me know. But yeah, basically,
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was really thinking about, especially with what you said, Michael, about closing games with the Vipers. But what I see is that the lack of leadership or consistency coming out of halftime, because we see people we see this Vipers team bounce back in the fourth quarter. Whatever the adjustments they make from blowing up in the third quarter, they figure it out through halfway in the fourth. So I think the coaching staff is capable, and yes, it's a new league. Give your head coach a second year because of that. But I watched this Roughnecks game, and it's just like, it reminded me of the opener against the Renegades, of like, who would have thought that would be like a sign of more to come.
Very true. Great point.
Just to touch on that real quick, Sam, I think one of the biggest things that's been disappointing too with this is it's really the only team that's been pretty much doing the same thing for 9 weeks. You know, like there's been really no like
Great point.
significant improvement over the season. Like you could pretty much can predict a Vegas game just by knowing, you know, just on Tuesday you could say this is how it's going to be, and I just feel like it's been like that for 9 weeks for the most part. And it's been, I think that's been the most disappointing thing, because there is adjustments in game, like small minor adjustments, like Mib said, but it's not something that's been over the course of a whole game.
True. Yeah, no, you could definitely say that. I mean, obviously beyond the offensive coordinator change, which was a huge adjustment, but at the same time, the offense to me, I mean, it's been significantly better, but not enough to the point where I would say Ray Sherman necessarily needs to be given the job outright if there's another better candidate available. Pierce, did you have any thoughts on this, or are we good to move on?
I just say, like, when it comes to, like, questioning Rod Woodson, I don't think they're gonna push on him. Like, I think when it comes to young leagues like this, I don't think anybody's really gonna leave. The USFL people stepped down, but I think that was more of their choice than them actually being bad coaches. Except for, like, maybe Kirby Wilson, which we know how that went out. But I think it's probably the offensive coordinator change, and it's kind of all I got from that.
Sort of bounce off of what Michael was saying. It's kind of amazing that there really hasn't been that much evolution in their scheming from week to week, and even mid game. I mean, going towards the fourth quarter, that last drive that Houston had, where they kind of were able to grind the clock out and they were going to get a field goal. Listen, Brandon Silvers has not been on it the last few games. Everything in your power needs to be devoted to loading up the box and stopping the run. You dare them to throw at that point, which 3 weeks ago sounded crazy. But now, honestly, in the moment that Houston has had with their offense, they haven't been that consistent in the passing game. I'm just baffled that kind of Vegas didn't put in 7-8 guys in the box and, kind of pull a Greg Williams. I know Greg Williams is like a kamikaze jet when it comes to defensive strategy sometimes, but that in that situation, you needed to set some blitzes. You had to be able to set people in there to stop them from running the ball, because that's all they were going to do. They didn't do that. They just let basically a 4-man front, and just played their linebackers off and let guys just kind of run down the field and grind the clock out. And so even mid-game adjustments are questionable at best. I hope to see some progress in the offseason, whatever it is for Woodson and his staff. I have a little more faith in someone such as like Hines Ward in San Antonio. I think Hines Ward is going to figure it out, and I do think he puts a little more faith in his assistants, at least presently. I know things haven't gone well for them, but I also think it's bad luck, and obviously quarterback injuries have been killing them all season. So that's a little bit of a different circumstance. For Vegas, quite frankly, I think they've had the components to work it out even through certain difficulties, and they just haven't.
Yeah, I think you made a great point there with San Antonio in particular. I mean, you see a little bit different circumstance there, and they have shown some promise over the past couple of days, or weeks, sorry, with, despite the quarterback issues that they've had. Bringing back Jack Cohn has been hit or miss, but they're still finding ways to win, which I thought was impressive this past weekend. But moving on to the Houston game, Houston clinches a playoff berth in the South, which we kind of had a feeling was coming. They've been the only team that looked competent, although they keep continuing to lose against the North. I guess the Vegas finally proved that wrong, however. So what are your thoughts on this game, Pierce? I know you're a Texas football fan. Are you a fan of the Roughnecks, or who's your XFL team?
Unfortunately, I am a fan of the Orlando Guardians. So
I should have known that.
Yeah, it's been rough. It's been rough.
How unlucky.
Yeah, very much, basically. Like, for the Guardians, at least, quarterback problem. I still don't think Dormity's that great. I think he's basically just been that raw guy that makes good plays for our team, but overall, I don't think he's good enough. And, like, you can keep him going to the offseason, but we definitely need to look for someone else, because I do not trust him at all. And just, like, it's kind of like with Vegas, too. It's like we have our running back core is good. Jermaine Martin and Darrington are good. I like our receiver core. We love Cody Latimer. We got some good offensive linemen. Our defense is pretty good. It's just like, I think that's a coaching problem. I think it might be even worse than the Vipers. But like I said earlier too, it's like they're more likely not going to change with the head coach or anything. So am I going to expect the same results? Maybe, but I can only hope for the best from here.
That's fair.
Ironically enough, I don't think Terrell Buckley is worse than Rod Woodson in Orlando, and I don't think Orlando's issues this year have been necessarily QB play once Quentin Dormady came in. I think it's just been a lack of overall discipline on the defensive side of things. And I say that in the sense of like, not that they're not as talented. I just don't think that they're as disciplined, whether it's well coached or if it's just that these guys are a little bit out of their element. They had a lot of turnover. So it was very, a lot of short guys, like a lot of guys coming in with short weeks or short amounts of time with the playbook. And I think on defense, it's a lot more glaring when you have that much of a changeover than it is on offense. So I think Orlando's issues have just been small tic-tac things here. I mean, they opened up the season week 1. I think they had 3 projected starters on the offensive line not playing due to injury. Quarterback issues were, obviously a part of that. But once Dormady came in, what was that, 4 or 5 weeks ago, realistically speaking, those first 3 games that he came in, you guys could have won and been on a run there. It was just the defense just didn't match the offense there. And I actually don't think Terrell Buckley has a chaotic, what coaching style at the top like Rod Woodson does. At least it doesn't appear that way to me, because a lot could probably be happening behind the scenes, but I don't see that.
Yeah. No, that team, I think there's just some glaring holes at specific positions. Obviously, their offensive line has just been non-existent. It's been completely blown up this entire season. Their quarterback play, I actually, for one, have liked what I've seen from Dormady. I think he had a spectacular game in Vegas, and he had a spectacular game against DC. That guy can throw the ball downfield. His pinpoint accuracy on deep balls is better than any of the quarterbacks I've seen in this league this season, maybe minus Ben DiNucci, although DiNucci is kind of a wild card. So, but with Dormady, I mean, I think he just needs a little more time to develop. I don't know if it's as a starter, but I think he just needs a little more time. Granted, he did this in the middle of a very chaotic season for him. He almost got booted out of the league. For him to, I'm just immense with him, just the fact that he survived and was able to clear his name and continue playing. That's, to me, is one of the stories I think about with Orlando. But I think a lot of it has to do with roster construction. And that's something that our resident expert, Mike Mitchell, had pointed out before the season even started. Just looking up and down the roster, it was not going to work out. And it was just clear as day. And it hasn't, which is a shame, because you have guys like Cody Latimer, you have Charleston Rambo, you have some good running backs, you have good skill position players that you get stuff done on offense. But, it's been bad offensive line play. Their defense, as you mentioned, Michael, cannot get a turnover. They go weeks on end without getting a turnover. That's untenable. You can't do that. You have to create some sort of chaos on defense, and they just absolutely cannot. So it seeks their entire operation, and it's unfortunate, because I think this team is in some ways more talented than what their record shows, but I could say that about Vegas too as well.
So let me just point blank ask you this, Andy. Who is the least talented team in the XFL right now?
I'm going to say San Antonio on offense. Your defense I actually like, but offensively, I think there's a lot of holes. And it's not because I dislike individual players too much. I mean, their offensive line is also in shambles as well. I know they've had a lot of injuries. Their quarterback room just wasn't cutting it. Doesn't matter who was playing. Wasn't going to work. The receivers I like, but the problem is they just don't seem to mesh. Guys like TJ Vasher need to be getting the ball more, and I just don't see that. I'm just kind of curious as to what their strategy was as far as getting any sort of separation or consistency from their receiver position. Their tight ends kind of disappear. I like Elise Mack, but he hasn't really done much. I think offensively, that's kind of where I'm at with San Antonio. I'd have to say overall roster-wise, even though I think they've gotten some things done, I think their coaching has at times actually been really underrated. But I'd have to go with them personally, just from a standpoint of like who I'm not as impressed with from a day-to-day operation.
I'm actually kind of surprised. I was completely expecting the Guardians' answer there.
I was too.
You said Vasher. I think Landon Akers.
I like Landon Akers too.
I think that offense needs to run.
I was
through
thinking
Landon
Vasher.
Akers.
Yeah.
But I think San Antonio. I think the only one offense in the league is actually averaged less points per game than San Antonio's, and I think that's Arlington.
Yeah.
Is their average still that low after this game, though?
This game, you got to remember there was a fumble 6 in this game.
Oh, that's a good point.
Like,
That's
I
a good point.
So
I
I think it was
forgot
a
about
fumble
that.
6. Yeah.
They always manage to get a defensive touchdown somehow. But anyway, we'll go ahead and move right on to that game. So obviously, Arlington took DC to task this week with Luis Perez at the helm. We saw a little bit of Kelly Bryant as well. And DC still ended up pulling out the victory and clinching the North Division and home field advantage, 28-26. So let's go to our resident DC fan. What did you see in this game that you liked, and what did you see in this game you didn't like?
So first and foremost, you mentioned Greg Williams earlier about his kamikaze, defensive swarming, style. But just like every week, DC in the fourth quarter, once they get a lead, he goes to this soft ass cover 2 or shell style defense that just gets torched. And we give up a ton of yards. We talked about it fantasy for like 4 weeks in a row. I've had to keep telling, our fantasy expert that like they give up the yards, but it's always in the fourth quarter. They almost blew the game against Houston in the fourth quarter when Cole McDonald came in. They let Arlington tie this game to force it into overtime this weekend. Orlando just put up scorched us when we were in that defense in the fourth quarter in the second half. Really, in that game, I know that game was back and forth and the whole way through, but he went to that soft style of defense to try to protect and shell it, and we just got torched. Michael Joseph is an aggressive cornerback, and he is very much the type of player that, I mean, you saw him, he smacked Arlington players in the mouth this weekend when he got tackles. I mean, he's aggressive. He's very, very violent on the side. He'll jump routes, but he's also a good coverage guy. But you can't let him just sit back there in his zone on flat feet. He's going to get burnt every time. It literally reminds me of Trayvon Diggs. I'm sorry, Pierce. But it reminds me.
Exactly what I was thinking of when you were saying all this.
It reminds me of Trayvon Diggs. When Diggs sits back there and he has to sit, he gets burned. But again, this was just DC kind of just being DC, kind of dominating the game, kind of letting it get close towards the end, and then just squeaking out a win that they shouldn't have allowed to happen. And I just think Jordan Tiamu is coming on as a passer, which is dangerous for anybody else that's happening in this league. I think the second half of this year, he's been probably the top quarterback in the league overall. And it's just De'Aaron King has slowly had his role kind of dwindled a little bit. He played a lot more in this game, but I think that's just because it felt like it was in hand. But I don't know. I think DC's still the best team. I think Arlington put up a good fight, but that offense still, this game was again closer on paper than it, closer in score than it really, really was because of Arlington's defense.
I think the biggest thing we saw in DC, and again, I'm a Battlehawks fan, so I got a lot of respect for Tamu. It's painful seeing him in red, but where was that DC run defense? Like the fact, how many games can we really say that, what was it, 120 yards that are put up? Most of those were like second half yardage. That is really, really tough to sustain. So I do hear you about the solo coverage and the deep zones, but once they got stretched, Arlington took full advantage and just ran the ball.
Yeah, I mean the score was 26-9, and it was just like all of a sudden Greg Williams just laid off. The aggressiveness of that defense that put us in the position to go up 26-9 just disappeared. And when that happens, it was again the same thing that Vegas was even another one that we saw that kind of happened when we played Vegas in that close game too. It just, that second half we get up and then just Greg Williams just for some reason is just like, I think he had that same issue with New Orleans when he was the defensive coordinator down there as well, in the NFL level. It's just this soft, shell defense that he plays, and it disappears, and just it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I had getting spammed with a bunch of Packers fans all of a sudden.
That might have been on me. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
You summoned them.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I really was not sure why Greg Williams, defensive coordinator Greg Williams, was laying off so aggressively, because quite frankly, Luis Perez is not the guy that has the arm to attack downfield, especially. But somehow he managed to get 335 passing yards in this game, which is amazing. I didn't think Perez was even capable of that. I love the guy, but I've never foresaw a 300-yard game against DC of all teams.
If you say 335 from Luis Perez, you expect him to throw the ball 43 times. That's how he gets there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the only way. And sneakily, I didn't realize this until I checked this morning. Davion Smith is tied for the league lead in touchdowns with Abram Smith. Sneakily having a decent season when they've actually decided to use him. They used him a lot in the goal line, obviously, but not having the same season that Abram Smith having. But still, 7 touchdowns is nothing to sniff at. But something that our guy Pat Ruffino said a few weeks ago, and he pointed it out when DC went to St. Louis, one of his biggest questions was, why in the world were they not attacking the seams against Greg Williams' defense? Well, everyone else must have heard him, because since that point, when Greg Williams has been uber aggressive against teams that can actually throw the ball downfield, they have attacked and attacked and attacked. Ben DiNucci did it for Seattle. Cole McDonald was doing it for Houston. Quentin Dormady was doing it for Orlando. Suddenly people have figured out where they can attack these DBs and really get them into trouble and pull some of these fouls, like Michael Joseph, for example, who's kind of played that Trayvon Diggs role, like you were alluding to. He's kind of like getting in trouble and he'll get interceptions, but also get, penalties because he just doesn't know how to go one-on-one coverage with these guys. I'm going to say it right now. I don't think you want to see Seattle at home. I know DC has never lost at home. Seattle is confident. They're really confident, especially after last week, after yesterday. I think they've got something going, and I really think that they have a shot because they know how to attack aggressively down the field. That's a team that I'm really looking forward to. If they get into the playoffs and they play at DC, that's going to be a barn burner. That's going to be terrifying, honestly.
I mentioned that I'd rather see St. Louis than I would Seattle in the chat with Sam the other day, because I think we match up better with St. Louis than we do Seattle.
Yeah.
That's a fair point, but I mean, it depends on where you're playing. If you're playing in St. Louis, man, I think I'd rather play in Seattle personally.
We controlled that game in St. Louis, though.
Man,
we controlled that game in St. Louis. Like
St. Louis loses, they're pretty quiet. Saw that last game.
Yeah. I mean, St. Louis has not really dominated at home as we all expected this whole season, to be honest. They've had amazing crowds. They have a fantastic fans. The only game they really can deal the dome, but they've only controlled the Arlington game. That's the only one that they were really in control of it from front to end. Vegas gave them trouble. DC ran them over, and Seattle kicked their tails yesterday. They've had trouble at home, even though they've had great home field advantage. They play better on the road than they do at home. That's the crazy part. I don't think they would win in DC because they've shown that they just don't have the horses and they just don't match up well with DC, period. But I do believe that Seattle has a legit opportunity there. And I mean, Seattle's a team would be like the wild. If Seattle was like a wild card team in the NFL, they'd be like that 5-6 seed that I'm like, man, they could make a run to the Super Bowl if they really wanted to. That's how I feel about them. Obviously, the road is not that long, but that's how confident I feel about them if they put everything together and don't turn the ball over.
Absolutely. Well, this is the point in the program where we kind of transition over to the USFL Week 1, given that we kind of already discussed all of the XFL games this week. So the big storyline this weekend, in my personal opinion, was the fact that Memphis had a pretty big crowd, but it was not anywhere near what Fox reported. We'll just leave it up with that. And then also on top of that, the two teams that met in the championship game, not only both won their opening games, but they actually also both scored 27 points, which I thought was kind of ironic. But interesting to see. Pierce, what are your takes on the Stars and the Birmingham Stallions winning this week?
So I am a Stallions fan. I've always been. And this game against the Generals, this was an awesome game. I wish this was over the Memphis game because I honestly, it's just such a good game. But I can't say that Stallions, they scared me for a second in the first half. There was just some things not working. The defense was on point almost the entire game. And then injuries start to pile up. Obviously, Jamar Smith, I think he had something with his wrist. And then Scooby Wright's out. I think he re-aggravated his calf. And, of course, the brutal one was Marlon Williams tearing his ACL. I was telling it right off the bat when I first saw it. I was like, he tore it. I was it's sad because I was really happy that he was going to be our wide receiver number 1 going into it. like we got the job done, but this game kind of leaves me to the point of like we gotta figure out some things. Like I feel like yeah, cool, we won, but we still got a whole nother season ahead of us, and that's how I kind of want to see it. It's like what can they fill, or what can they done better.
Absolutely. So in the post-game presser, I do know that the Stallions said they would be addressing the wide receiver position. They said they would also look at quarterback, but it all depends on how many weeks Jamar Smith will miss because of his finger. But Alex Magoo looked pretty good, so I was encouraged by that. I will say that they might have one of the better backup quarterbacks in the entire league, so you definitely don't necessarily have to worry too much. But you're only one play away from playing, I think it's Jalen Morton that's there as the third
Yeah,
quarterback.
I believe he's Prairie View A&M. Very small school, very small sample size. So I don't know. Maybe they kind of do a 2 quarterback system like with the Generals did. But I'm not scared of Magoo being the starter. I still am a Magoo supporter, when he played that week 1. So I definitely believe he could get the job done for sure.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What were your guys' thoughts? Andy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, for Birmingham, I mean, I think it was a sound enough performance at home, opening up, defending their title, playing the New Jersey Generals again. The Generals came in with a better game plan last year and were leading until the last minute until Jamar Smith had that game-winning drive at the end of the fourth quarter last year. This year, I mean, they just couldn't get out of their own way. They kept turning the ball over. I'm disappointed that they weren't able to really do anything in the red zone with DeAndre Johnson or just kind of manage whatever 2 quarterback system they got. Dakota Prukop coming in there, not really doing much. I'm not sure. The Generals just seemed really discombobulated on offense, and Birmingham's defense is really good. I mean, that's the thing. They might have to be more of a defensive team this year. If things are going to not go well for them on offense, if they have too many injuries sustained, they might have to lean more on their defense, which I think they can. I think they have the depth to do so. I worry a little bit about the Marlon Williams injury. Obviously, that's devastating. He was great last year, and obviously they don't have someone like a Victor Bolden this year. Obviously, they don't have that weapon this year. He was a really key piece. I know his chemistry with Jamar Smith was kind of hit and miss last year, but still is a guy that you want to have on your roster. Magoo looked really fast. I'm kind of surprised that he ran so many circles around those Generals players, but he looked really good. So even if Smith's out for an extended period of time, I'm fine with him coming in and kind of being serviceable. But for Birmingham, I mean, it's a good start. I just wonder, it's kind of it is a much large returning roster too. So there's a lot of continuity, there's a lot of chemistry, and there's a lot of consistency on the coaching staff too. So not much to kind of figure out, just more of like, can they keep it going? Can they kind of keep it together throughout the season and not sustain so many injuries?
That's very true. I mean, after that first week, it was unreal. I mean, like watching Marlon Williams going down with Achilles, and then like Scooby Wright, Jamar Smith. It seemed like every other play somebody was dropping with an injury, and key players too. It wasn't backup players or guys on special teams or anything like that. So it's very discouraging to see right away in the season. I know we've kind of talked heavily about the injury woes that the USFL players faced in the NFL season, but to see them face them this early, it kind of sucks to see, especially with some of the guys, Marlon Williams in particular, I thought had an outside shot at the NFL. Michael, you got something to say?
Yeah, Case Cook has looked like the best quarterback probably in all of spring football for the most part. Philadelphia was really impressive, but they got. I don't know if it's necessarily that they just kind of overestimated Memphis. It just felt like that game was closer than it should have been. Unlike the New Jersey Generals game with Birmingham, New Jersey never really felt like they were in control. Like, Prukop came in, and I know that was probably a transitional period for him. I don't think that anybody necessarily expected him to come out and just have a lights out game. I really like Prukop, and I think that it's going to be a good good blend with him and DeAndre Johnson. But for some reason, DeAndre Johnson, it looked off. Like something was amiss with New Jersey there, which is surprising because all 4 teams that played on Saturday had basically the core of their coaching staff returning, whereas the 4 teams that played on Sunday all had turnover, and you could see it. It was really a night and day for the USFL, because even though the New Jersey Generals only put up 10 points and turned the ball over a ton, they still looked a little more like cohesive, like as far as like a unit was concerned. Like you could see that they had players that knew what they were supposed to be doing. They just weren't executing. Whereas the other 4 teams were just kind of like at moments you could see the confusion. You could see, the players that are like still trying to learn a system that they're not necessarily accustomed to per se. Now, a few teams like Michigan, they had their offensive coordinator returning. So you have a few teams that still have a little continuity there, but it just felt disjointed between those 2 days. Just a quick observation as far as the whole league overview is concerned. That's kind of how I felt. But Birmingham's injury, Marlon Williams' Achilles injury, is awful. And it's awful because it's such a bad injury for pretty much the skill position players. And I put skill because I'm an offensive lineman, so we're skilled too. But the skilled position players. And Fox, do better. Just throwing a microphone in his face after he just found out that his Achilles injury was absolutely devastating. I mean, kudos to Marlon for taking the interview, and kudos to Marlon for being professional through the whole process. But come on, do better. Like, What do you think he's gonna say when you ask him, "How do you feel?" I'm devastated. Duh. Jesus. Just do better. Anyways, sorry, I just had to throw that in there.
No, I completely agree. As you know, I talked about it on Twitter. I just don't understand why you would talk to a guy like that, and the fact that he handled it so professionally, to me, just shows like what kind of guy he is. Either that or he was really, really doped up on some good pain meds, because man, I would have just been like, "Are you seriously talking to me about this right now?" Like, what are you thinking? The fact that he was so calm, cool, and collected just goes to show that he's a true professional, quite honestly, because honestly, I couldn't imagine being in his position at that particular moment. His season was literally ended, less than an hour before that interview went through?
Yeah, less than 40 minutes, really. I mean,
yeah,
it was
exactly.
One more thing. Did anybody else feel really disappointed in Birmingham's usage of Bo Scarborough?
Yes.
Because I felt like that was a complete mishap on their part. I mean, I love CJ Marable. Don't get me wrong. I loved him at Coastal Carolina. But with the way Bo played last year, I don't understand how you don't even have him part of the game plan at all. It made zero sense to me.
Overall, the whole running game was bad. Like, they could have gotten anything. Could have changed if they used more Scarborough? I don't know. Just because that was the only weak point of that game was the running game. But I definitely try to maybe share more carries with Scarborough. I don't know what they're thinking of. Maybe there's something we don't know. Maybe they think Marable is the better option overall. But who knows?
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of odd. I mean, I could see if game flow you bring in Maribel in like passing situations, but why not roll a Scarborough if you got the lead? You want to ice the game anyway.
If you're going to run Maribel, you should be doing the option. Out of Coastal Carolina, he runs that crazy triple option spread that they do, and I would rather do that. But when you're trying to ice a game, Scarborough's your guy. He was the closer for them last year, and he was a midseason ad that really added great depth to the running game. And I mean, he had that huge run to begin the scoring in the championship game. I mean, he really sets the table for you, and he's somebody that you can rely on. I mean, he is an NFL running back, one note NFL running back, but an NFL running back nonetheless, just based on his build. You can utilize him that way. I'm not sure why he didn't factor the offense. Maybe they just want to save him for later in the season. I don't know, but that was just It was bizarre. I agree, Michael.
It was just strange to me. I mean, like I said, I love Marable. He gives you a passing option that Scarborough doesn't necessarily give you, but at the same time, like, just what Scarborough did for you last year. I mean, he was on my MVP shortlist, and now he's completely scratched off of that right now, and unfortunately. So I do like Magoo, and I like saying his name just because it's hilarious to me, and I'm also immature. So.
It's my man.
Hey, you know what? It is an interesting name, but I tell you what, he came out and he balled yesterday.
Oh, he balled out.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely balled out.
I was impressed.
Yeah.
But I also like what he said in the post-game presser. Somebody asked him, he was seen kind of like hanging out with Jamar Smith before the game at warm-ups and stuff, like in between drills and stuff. It appeared as if they are actually like friends off the field, or at least friendly. And he mentioned that, and he was like, we support each other. 100%. We're on the same team. So, whether he starts, whether I start, whether, I have to come in and play for him, we both know we're going to do our best and we're going to do our job when we're called upon. And so I thought that was really encouraging because obviously it sounds like Birmingham's building the team the right way.
It reminds me of the DC quarterback relationship
100%.
between King and Tiamo.
100%. Although I would even say that you have to give Magoo a little bit more credit than, say, a King because, Magoo was a draft pick in the NFL. And now he's behind a guy in Jamar Smith who was not, once upon a time. So it's kind of interesting to see how their careers have gone, especially because you have to guess that Magoo wants to get back to the NFL just like all the rest of these guys. But moving on to the next game, which I thought was a very interesting one and was kind of at first, I thought it was a lot closer than it should have been. I thought Michigan was going to blow the Gamblers out in this game, and that's what it turned out to be. But at the beginning, Kenji Bahar and the Gamblers looked quite scrappy. So, Andy, what was your thoughts on this game?
It's a love fest. Josh Love was incredible. I cannot believe he was able to attack the way he did. I haven't seen that. Josh Love was not here last year. And for that consistency on the staff, it really showed. I'm glad they have someone like Reggie Corbin in there. Just a great weapon overall. Just an awesome asset to have on that offense. Love. I wanted to see more Carson Strong, and he came in too. He was 5 for 5 with 30 yards. Good for him. I'm glad to see him get a little bit of burn as well. But I mean, Josh Love was just on fire. I was easily going to say that Case Cookis was going to be the best quarterback of the entire weekend, and he played very well as well. His throw to Devin Gray is definitely the best throw of the entire weekend, possibly in both leagues. But I really got to give it up for Josh Love. I mean, he earned Offensive Player of the Week, and he deserves it. I mean, he was outstanding. He was consistent. He had all the right reads. He was just really confident, poised, and led that team to a blowout in the second half. As far as Houston goes, I mean, we've talked about it maybe a little bit. Man, they missed all those defensive players they lost. Donald Payne, Reggie Northrup, Willie Likely, all those guys who went over to the XFL. It's tough, man. It's tough not having that on your defense because their defense was their calling card last year. Even their biggest problem last year was they couldn't hold the lead to save their lives. And this year, I don't know if they're going to have much. If they're going to really have much luck building a lead to begin with, because I think they're a little bit more depleted than they were last year, to be honest. So I don't know. For Kenji Bahar, I mean, he's just so wiry. Like he's so in and out. Sometimes he makes a great throw, and other times he just can't assess pressure, and he just doesn't know how to get out of it. It's a hard thing for him. This Houston team, I think is, I'm going to be honest, I think they're going to be kind of towards the bottom of the league again. I'm a little worried about their operation, but for Michigan, I mean, this is a great sign, and we'll see how they build on it and what their home support's going to be like this year. We won't find out about that until week 3, but just good early on sign for Michigan, especially on offense, especially if Josh Love keeps playing like this.
For Houston, I think one question they can sort out sooner the better is who's the premier back. I couldn't tell. Is it Whaley? I think TJ Pledger made the most of every snap he got. But I don't think they need to have a really even dual back system in Houston. I don't think that's what that offensive line is geared for. I don't think that's what the passing protection that they're scheming is geared for. I think once they figure out who their premier back is, they'll be a lot better off.
Well, I'm curious what the injury is with Mark Thompson, because if he comes back like he was last year, then you're probably okay. But again, I have no idea what the injury is. Again, I don't follow the Gamblers that closely. I could probably do some research on that and figure it out real quick. But I was shocked to see him as an inactive in week 1 because that's your go-to guy in that backfield, and it definitely paid dividends for Michigan for sure. So obviously, like I spoke about, we expected this to be a blowout, but Michael, did you expect the success that the quarterbacks had against this Houston defense? I mean, we look at their overall, Carson Strong was 5 for 5, and then you look at Love, and he was 18 for 20. So they literally threw 2 incomplete passes from the quarterback position on 25 attempts. That's insane.
So watching this game, I don't know what to make of this game because I don't know if the Houston Gamblers are the early season Orlando Guardians of the USFL, and all these stats are going to be slanted in one direction or the other because of, Houston just not being as good. I don't know where Houston really sits as a team as a whole. Kenji Bahar looked really good. He has a great arm. But if this offense can't complement this defense, it's going to be a very long year. Because as we all know, sometimes your best defense is an offense that can stay on the field. And defenses get, on and off fast. It helps keep everybody fresh. Houston lost a ton on defense, and I don't know if the high turnover there, plus the coaching changes that took place over there, if it's going to be this long season where, guys like Josh Love just go out there and feast on him, feast on this defense all year. It will be interesting to see where it goes from here. So this game was very tricky for me because while Josh Love looked amazing and Pittsburgh came out and kind of, took the reins eventually in the second half, I don't know what to really make of this team at this moment. They're kind of they were my preseason like San Antonio Brahmas. Like they're either going to really surprise me or they're going to be right where most people expect them to kind of be. That's kind of where I was with the San Antonio Brahmas at the start of the season. So I don't know what to make of it. I'm surprised that the defense wasn't as good, but you have an offensive head coach now. I don't know. Hopefully they make some adjustments this week, and we'll see what happens in week 2. But if week 2 is a repeat of performance, it's going to be a very long season for Gamblers fans, unfortunately, for sure.
It'll be interesting, man. Like I said, hopefully Mark Thompson comes back healthy, and hopefully Kenji Bahar can get it going. I was a big supporter of his last season. Again, I really didn't want to see Thorson a whole lot, but unfortunately, Thorson's gone now. Bahar's not looking that great, so now I'm kind of eating a little bit of crow so far. But let's go ahead and move on to the last game of the weekend. The New Orleans Breakers beat the Maulers, which looked way overmatched in this game. It seemed like they couldn't get any momentum going until the very end of the game, when at that point it was already well in hand. Michael, I know you're the resident Breakers fan. Ironic that you just happen to root for all the good teams, but we'll leave that alone.
Yeah,
what was
I'm
your
like
thought on
Pierce
their
now.
performance?
What was that?
I'm like Pierce now. I'm the Maulers fan here.
I'm always
Okay. Well, perfect. We'll have you go next.
As a Breakers fan, the whole reason why I'm a Breakers fan is because I picked them based off their uniform. I think they have the best uniform in the league, plain and simple. That's where I picked it from. There's no team in DC. If they get a team near DC or whatever, then I'll switch. But right now, I'm a Breakers fan until that happens. So, at this game, the score was a lot closer than this game really was. I think it was a pick 6 and a fumble 6, if I'm correct. It was 2 defensive touchdowns for Pittsburgh that kept them in this game. The offense was dreadful for Pittsburgh, and I don't know. Again, this is a coaching staff change for them. It was a nightmare, and James Morgan did not look good at all. He was throwing high left. Troy Williams looked a little bit better, but I wouldn't go out of my way to say, awesome job. He did sustain some drives and put them in positions to score, but it just overall it looked dysfunctional. Once New Orleans settled down, because I think that first half was just dreadful for, I think, not just MBT on offense, but the defense as well. But once that whole team settled down a little bit, it got into a rhythm, and Pittsburgh just couldn't get anything going. I think they had 3 points offensively, and it reminded me of Arlington week 1. It was scary how much it looked like Arlington week 1. It just didn't go their way, unlike Arlington, really. Yeah, well, we'll get into MBT with the Breakers. Dreadful first half, but looked stellar in the second half. Looked way much better. His third quarter alone was better than his first 2 quarters. He made some nice throws. I think that he needs to understand that the timing might be sped up a little bit compared to the CFL. I think once he gets that timing down, the Breakers wide receivers and MBT are going to be hard to stop. And Sage Surratt, you called it, Sam. I give it to you. You called that one. He looks like he might be the best tight end in the league. MBT loves those tight ends. So
Yeah, I had a feeling, not a lot of coaching changes in the Breakers organization. I think it was just the head coach, maybe a couple assistant position coaches.
And I want to say congratulations to Coach Flip for not just his first victory as a head coach, but with everything that he's gone through medically, and to be able to actually get out there on the field and run on the field, and he ran to shake the hand the hand of Horton. Like he was dead set on it, and it was an emotional victory for him. And I think everybody that watched that game felt it. So
Yeah,
congratulations to him for sure.
100%. I mean, even if he had not won the game, like that emotion he showed beforehand was
for sure, absolutely
crazy. It was amazing to see. I was not aware of that, quite honestly. And as you guys can all see behind me, I'm a huge Eagles fan. Coach DiFilippo was a guy we worshipped in Philadelphia for a couple of years because of what he did with Carson Wentz. He made an MVP level candidate. So, hopefully he can do the same with MBT. I think he will ultimately. But it's going to be interesting for sure. Mibs, you being the Pittsburgh Maulers fan, what was your thoughts on this game?
First thoughts is, man, can it be over already? But no. I feel good because of how low the bar was last season. I don't think this is an awful team through and through. I feel better because I think we just got outplayed. I feel like the New Orleans Breakers had a better team. Again, Surratt just lost his mind and wanted to play Madden out there on the field. And if they keep this up, right, the Breakers really might have like Bethel Tomlin. If you sling for 300 yards a game, you'll be league MVP. Like that's just the pace. And I feel better because I think we got outplayed. I think the mistakes defensively, no one can cover man on man. But again, Surratt was going crazy. That's where I take Shady. Like that's what makes me feel good. I just don't think everything is bad. I think this is a new team that has had a lot of turnover, to say the least. That just needs a few more games to find a rhythm.
I will say that if Pittsburgh doesn't go outside to try to bring in a quarterback, that they should roll with Troy Williams moving forward. I will say that because I think Troy Williams is going to be their best option offensively to move the ball because he already proved that he can move the ball better than Morgan. So
I agree. I agree, but I don't think Morgan has had a fair shake because protection was an issue from the first snap. You got to do what you got to do. You make adjustments as a coaching staff, but because the protection isn't there, I'm not sure how much we should really consider benching one for the other because of mispasses or misreads.
That's fair to a certain extent. I mean, both of them looked equally bad at points in time.
Right.
But at the same point, we saw protection issues on the other side of the field. And MBT looked terrible. Coaches made adjustments, and then they ended up winning the game. And MBT looked like an MVP level candidate in the second half, like you said, passed for 300 yards, and eventually maybe he's pacing the league in passing yards. So I think some of that is definitely on the coaches for not making the necessary adjustments to give him time or give them more time at the quarterback position, which is maybe why we saw James Morgan come back out after a while. I'm not quite sure what to think about their system right now. Go ahead.
No, it's on my that didn't impress me much segment, what I was going to say. So
okay,
I'm going to save it for that, but
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
so, like for the few times we saw Pittsburgh in the red zone, we saw both quarterbacks struggle. Right? Both got there, both underwhelmed. I wish I was at practice. I wish they live stream practice so I can see reps more. But I don't think benching Morgan moves the needle enough
No.
to justify all of the ramifications of putting a new QB1 in.
That's fair. I mean, as of right now, that's fair. We'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Chris, you are also a Pittsburgh Maulers fan. You're still with us. What are your thoughts on this game?
No, I'm not a Maulers fan anymore. I'm a Showboats fan.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
forgot you changed allegiance right before.
Dang, already?
Nah, so I was kind of disappointed going into the season for the Maulers. Obviously, like I wish they kept Vlad Lee. I think it's a disgrace to the league that Vlad Lee is a backup, to the Stars. They're wasting away his talent in his football career. But no, I mean, I think I told you what I thought about James Morgan. I thought he wasn't good, and I remember y'all saying, "Oh, he's going to be great." He's a former NFL guy. I knew he was never special. He's way below average. Troy Williams. I mean, explain to me how he got a shot in this league in the first place. He was a subpar college quarterback. There's legit starters, by the way, in my IFL that are probably 10 times better than he will ever be. So I think for the Maulers going forward, bring back Chase Forcade. He's a free agent right now. I could see him bring him back. And then for the Breakers, McLeod obviously had a better second half. We want to point to that. But his first half was so bad. He was so slow. And if DeAndre Francois had the second half that MBT had, he would have been average. So I'm going to stick to the same thing with McLeod and say, I mean, he was average. Right now he's average. That doesn't mean he can't get better, but I want to see Akil Glass. Spring League is about giving new guys opportunity, and Akil Glass and David Chiefs are two young guys that deserve to be put in. So that's my stance on it.
Is that for real Tom Grossi tuning in right now?
That's Tom Grossi.
That's Tom Grossi?
That's Tom Grossi.
Wow, it is.
Wow, respect. Thanks for tuning in, Tom Grossi. We appreciate that. That's amazing.
Wow. Huh.
Chris, you do understand the splits that MBT had, right? You understand he was 6 for 19 for 95 yards in the first half. And he ended with over 300 for the game. You do understand the splits, right? Because he looked terrible in the first half. Nobody's saying that, but to say that he was average is kind of crap when you take a look at the second half where he was actually pretty stellar. His second half was like most spring football quarterbacks had in whole games.
No, I totally understand. He had a great second half, but I look at the entire game. I don't look at one half. If you're playing the Stallions, or even if you're playing the Stars, I'll give the Stars credit, which they're a whole other story with their horrendous offensive line and their whole unit as a whole. But if you're playing the Stallions, you're going down 28-0 in the first half. And then,
what I'm getting at, Chris, though, is you just said that if DeAndre Francois had that second half that MBT had, he would be average. That's what you just said.
No,
but for some reason, I don't understand that correlation. If Francois had that same second half, he would be great too. Any quarterback that had that second half would be considered great. It's just at that moment in time, the whole game was not great. He needs to put it all together. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think there's nobody questioning that first half was dreadful. I mean, with 6 for 19, that's Cam Newton. That's Cam Newton bad.
So I think to clarify something I said earlier about the Maulers getting outplayed, more particularly, they got outcoached because whatever adjustments, right? Because we saw a defense and a special teams that was doing well, but like they say, it's the hope that kills. So, but that potential is what I look forward to. On the defense and special team side of the ball, they can be explosive. Turnovers will win you championships. I don't know what happened in that second half, but the Maulers got outcoached. Absolutely outcoached on the defensive side of the ball. And that's sad, but still, like, the weakest part of this Pittsburgh team is still the offense. And folks need to get fired if that doesn't change soon.
I agree. No, I totally agree. But back to my point about like the Maulers, if James Morgan gets another chance, I will not watch the USFL for the rest of the year. Um, the whole point of these spring leagues is to get new guys in. So why do we keep rocking with the same old guys? Paxton Lynch got chance after chance. DeAndre Francois hasn't had a full chance. Let's make that clear.
Let's not
Quinn
talk about
I'm just saying, man. Like it, you got to make it fair. At some point, man, give everyone playing time. It, you know, if you want to get these guys to the next level, you're never gonna do that with having the same people back there. So, make changes.
Well, I would like to point out that they did make a change. They put in Troy Williams from Utah, who has never gotten a professional opportunity, to my knowledge. So that is a change. Is it an IFL guy? No, it's not, Krish. I'm sorry. It's not an FCF guy either. As much as I would love it to be.
It doesn't have to be an IFL guy. That's what I'm saying. Like this whole narrative where
then
like
what's the problem? Because you're asking for a new guy to come in and play, and a new guy came in and played.
Isn't James Morgan a rookie too?
Yeah.
he's
not a rookie, but a rookie in professional or spring football.
Yeah.
James Morgan was also the backup for the New York Jets for 3 years. So, I mean, I don't call that a rookie. I call that a vet. But if you go back to the point where, yeah, Troy Williams got a chance, but we saw what he's capable of, right? If there has to be another guy, there has to be another guy a chance. Otherwise, what's the narrative next week when they lose by however much they lose by? It's going to be, oh, we should have got the new guy in, you know. So I'm actually trying to protect them from having problems down the road. You know, I'm being a good coach, you know, because I'm a future NFL GM, so I see problems in the future. So, you know, they can thank me for that.
Oh man, Chris, the stuff you say with such confidence, it cracks me up. Andy, you got something to say?
James Morgan's defense, he was under Adam Gase as his head coach, which that like regresses him automatically because it's Adam Gase. So I think the biggest term I can go off for the Maulers is raw. Gamblers is disorganized, but the Maulers are raw. I really do think Maulers have something going on. It's just that it's very much like too early in. Like it's really just going to be to the point how long it's going to take for them to just click. And there is some hard teams like the Breakers where, yeah, they were outcoached, outplayed. And then you have the Stallions who are basically still all together. So it's just going to it's really going to be how long does it take for them to like finally put it all together and be like an impressive team to go against the big boys, maybe pull the spoiler or something.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Go ahead, Mandy.
No, I was just going to say, I think the biggest thing going for the Maulers this season is that they can finally eat pizza. So you got to consider that as well. The big plus for them in this.
Still too soon. Still too soon.
I will never forget that. I will never forget the chat I was on that day. But look, yeah, for the Maulers, I mean, just any semblance of offense was just non-existent that entire game. And I think it's a point to the Breakers defense. I do think they have a lot going for them still, even with Sharif Miller and Davin Bellamy not on the roster anymore. You still got a guy like Vontae Diggs. You can still do things on defense. I think you could still get some things done there. And look, I'm just going to come out. I am a huge McLeod Bethel Thompson supporter. The guy is tough as nails. That man was getting beaten like a drum in the first half. That offensive line was doing him absolutely no favors. He was getting blasted left and right. And yes, he did start off 6 for 19. I think he was 7 for 21 at one point. And yet that tough SOB kept coming out and firing balls downfield. Finally utilizing guys like Sage Harrod and Jonathan Adams, finally giving some sort of downfield offense for a team that should have had it last year and just could not put it together with Kyle Sloter. Seeing this offense finally kind of break through for the Breakers for lack of a better term, was really satisfying to see in the second half. And I hope it continues to go through. But Colin Bethel Thompson, look, the guy was a 6th quarterback on the Toronto Argos roster in the CFL. Like, that guy knows adversity. He's been through it. He almost got chased out of town in Toronto, and that guy kept through it. He is somebody that I think you have to ride with. I know that I get it. Akil Glass, very, very sexy component. I understand it. I get it. But I think McLeod is the guy. He's the guy you have to ride or die with. And him and John DeFilippo are going to have to figure it out on offense. And I think they will as the season progresses. Last thing I'll say to Mr. Grossi, welcome. And last thing I'll say is I wish that your Stan remix of the Aaron Rodgers situation was 10 minutes longer.
I'll be honest, man. It took me a minute to notice. I've been subscribed to Tom Grassi since I've been in 4th grade, man. I'm a huge fan. So, shout out to him. I appreciate him watching. And, I have to add on the Maulers, too. I was hoping to see Lindsey Scott Jr. out there, but then I realized he didn't report to camp, which I think is not a good move by him because he's a 7th-round draft pick, and he really could have increased his draft stock if he went out there and he balled out like I know he can. So, the whole point of the USFL draft was to get some of these, guys who are fringe 6th, 7th-round picks, possibly increasing their draft stock. So I was hoping to see more guys in the draft out on the field, but that was a little disappointing.
Michael, you got something to say? I'll follow you.
I think Scott's going to end up being in camp. I think he's expected as an undrafted to be an undrafted free agent somewhere or a late round pick somewhere. He'll be in camp in the NFL at least this year. As long as the USFL draft is doing that, I feel like most of these guys are going to end up attempting the NFL first, unless they're way down the list, like Harrison Frost was, or whatever.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, in Lindsey Scott's situation, he still has the opportunity to possibly be drafted. And why not take that opportunity? Because if nothing else happens, then you have the USFL to fall back on. And let's be real. After that week 1, do you think they're going to turn him down if he wants to come to the team? I doubt it very highly. They're gonna find some room for him somewhere on the roster right away. So I definitely see your point, Krish. And there is something to be said. There are, I believe, 3 draft picks that have signed contracts and come to camp and are looking to increase their stock. But I believe most of those guys are expected to go undrafted and may not even get opportunities in camp afterward. I would imagine most of these guys are really trying to drum up interest when there's no interest there in the first place. So it'll be kind of interesting to see if any of that works. But I wanted to move on to the last subject at hand, which I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. We have a couple different teams that are running 2 quarterback systems right now. So 2 quarterback systems, do they work? Yes or no? Let's go to Andy first.
It really depends on your offense. For example, like the Generals last year, you had Luis Perez and you had DeAndre Johnson. DeAndre Johnson was able to do the run pass option, and you were able to sprinkle in someone like Luis Perez, who was completing 80% of his passes and gave you more consistency as far as moving the chains. Their whole operation was just get the chains moving, keep the running game going, grind teams down, and play good defense, and it worked. So it has to complement what you're doing on the defensive side as well. I think there's teams that, quite frankly, you have to consider whether or not it's optimal if to have 2 quarterbacks. For the DC Defenders, for example, look, I think there's times when Tom was on fire and you need to keep him in there as the main horse. Sometimes it's good to bring in De'Ara King and mix it up a little bit, and he's able to be just a lightning rod in the backfield. You have times like that, and also to be able to throw as well, which he's done a little bit better job of as the season's gone along. But things of that nature, it really depends, honestly. I mean, there's some teams that have no quarterback room and have no business doing that, and there are other teams that do. But you have to understand which skill set you have and when you utilize that skill set. I mean, with the Houston Roughnecks, they have Brandon Silvers, and then they put in Cole McDonald in conversion plays. Sometimes they put him in the run, not have him as the main starter, which didn't go well against St. Louis a few weeks ago. So it really is contingent on the offensive system, and also if it complements the defense and what the scheme is for the entire game. So I hate to not give you a straight answer, but it really does depend on roster construction.
No, that's a great answer. I personally 100% agree. I think, like we've seen in DC, and I've talked about it several times on this show. I've talked about it all over. They constructed the roster that perfectly fit their scheme, so they knew what they were looking for ahead of time, and they married it, and that's why it's working. But we see other teams trying to go to these 2 quarterback systems because either they don't have a starter they're confident in, or other teams are doing this because they're benching a starter or whatever it may be. So it's kind of interesting to see. Houston's done it as well with some success. But yeah, Pittsburgh, I'm not sure how that's going to go. The Generals, I'm kind of torn on DeAndre Johnson after this weekend, to be quite honest. Michael, what's your take on the 2 quarterback systems?
I'm gonna say something here that might be in the minority as far as this is concerned, and I don't think 2 quarterback systems work. It's contradictive of me being a DC fan to say that, but if you take a look at what DC has done, Jordan Tiamu and De'Aaron King have very similar skill sets. De'Aaron King can throw the ball. I mean, we saw it at Houston. We know that he can. The 2 quarterback system works better in college because the percentage of players that have the top tier talent is not as high because it's spread out over the course of 100 and something schools or whatever. When you're in the professional level, you're looking at more of a top percentage of that top percentage. So it doesn't work as well. DeAndre Johnson and Luis Perez last year for the Generals, there was a reason they weren't in the championship game. Regardless of injuries or whatever else, if you look at it the way that they were with that dual quarterback threat, they're 2 separate system quarterbacks. They don't have a very similar skill set. So it becomes very predictable. When one person comes in that doesn't have the same skill set as another person, the defense is tipped off that a very low percentage may be a surprise play, but overall it's a very low percentage. So the defense is kind of tipped off to what's going to happen here. It was like when DC first went to De'Aaron King, it was all running. I mean, it was just like he came in and you knew there was going to be a run for the most part. They didn't throw it. It didn't really become super effective until they actually threw the ball. And then he was 2 for 2 for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. And people were like, oh, maybe we have to protect the pass a little bit with De'Aaron King in still too. And then it just opened up and the floodgates went for that 2 quarterback system to work. But that's because him and Tiamu have the same system. That's the reason, or similar skill set. That's why Tiamu can run the ball too. Overall, though, it doesn't work. If you have 2 opposite like that, it's not going to work. The Generals are going to be in that same situation with Prukop and DeAndre Johnson that they were with Perez and Johnson last year. It's going to be the same thing as far as that's concerned. I don't think there's another. Looking at the rosters right now, I don't think there's another team in the USFL that has a similar 2 system quarterback like DC, except for maybe Michigan with Josh Love and Carson Strong. But I think Love is a little more mobile. Well, Birmingham, I would say Birmingham, but I don't know if they were going to use the traditional two quarterback set there, if it was just going to be Jamar and then Magoo was just going to back him up. But they're very similar too.
Yeah, no, actually that would have been my first suggestion is the Stallions. They would have been able to perfectly craft that offense because Magoo and Jamar Smith are basically spinning images of skill sets. Pierce, what's your thought? 2 quarterback systems.
It's basically all part of a solid scheme and game plan. I don't think you can walk in say with the Cowboys or something. You have Dak who's pretty mobile. It's just such a very delicate plan that has to be a hit or miss. Like Michael said, Generals, it's kind of been of a miss so far. So what we've seen. And then I could say with the Guardians, if with the whole Dormany thing, they brought in Quentin Flowers. And then Flowers is in, and they only used him twice. And almost everybody knew they were going to run. And he was only in there for twice. I think it was 2 sneaks, and they were almost pretty much good at stopping them, but they managed to get a touchdown out of that. And it's just a very bold scheme to run. I don't think everyone can just run it and it will work out. So I think it really just depends on like just how that scheme works and what the coach really wants to prefer there.
Mibs, do you have any 2 cents on the two quarterback system?
Man, I sure do. I think no team should run it. Should run a two quarterback system, and I think for the teams that run it and it does well, they're lucky for the moment they're in. Like we take the Stallions talking about Jamar Smith and Magoo and those really similar complementary like quarterback play styles. But as Michael was talking about, as the talent pool narrows in standard deviations of differences, it's not sustainable. And I don't want two quarterback systems for the sake of spring football, right? Like what these young leagues need right now is consistency top down, right? Like they need consistency in their front offices, they need consistency in their coaching staffs. But two quarterback systems are just so particular to the talent you have in a particular quarterback room and their health, and you have to change so much around it that it doesn't leave sustainable roster choices. It doesn't leave sustainable coaching choices. And so I don't think any team should run it. I don't want to see it. I think it's bad for the sports long terms. And if it works, it's lucky, right? Like I don't think you can build for the future trying to gain talent because especially in these leagues with high turnover, who knows what the player pool is going to be next year. Man, those are my 2 cents. My 2 cents is don't play with two quarterbacks in mind.
I think it's a majority. I think the two quarterback minority works, but I think it's kind of like the Wildcat. Like the Wildcat, as far as an offensive, play is concerned, is it's not a majority percentage wise successful. Like I think that you have teams that try to run it multiple times, but I think like DC and Birmingham are very unique situations. Like Sam, you were saying, like roster construction around it. They built their team to work for it, but it's also having two quarterbacks with similar skill set and similar talent levels also helps that situation. And it's a huge advantage when you have it. But if you don't have it, it's eventually going to lead to not just, it's going to lead to the opposite direction. You're going to not be successful with it because, like, Mibbs just said, it's the consistency at the quarterback position, and you know exactly what you're getting from one guy all the time. There's a reason that it doesn't work in the NFL.
This is true. Or, well, we haven't seen it work. It could work, but we haven't seen it.
If it could work, it's going to be probably like a one and done before the NFL catches up to it and snuffs it out, just like they do every other system that comes in, like the RPO and all that other crap, like every single year.
100%.
A majority of teams are on a version of the RPO now, but it's like, I mean, it's just a standard play nowadays instead of it like being a full-fledged offense built around it, like it was when it first came into the league.
And not to mention, just like the rules are changing, right? Like that influences how people construct rosters, how people make personnel choices, and for as volatile as a two quarterback system is, I don't want to start building like coaching memory when the rules just might not be favorable for it. And who knows how many seasons.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. So we're going to move on to your favorite segment that you have not found out about yet. So here is That Don't Impress Me Much with Michael Washington here.
That don't impress me much.
Oh, you Pittsburgh Maulers fans, you are sad to see that logo up there for this segment. I know you are. This segment is going to be dedicated to the Pittsburgh Maulers offense. It was questionable at best. James Morgan did not look very good. Troy Williams came in, kind of moved the ball a little bit. My biggest deterrent for this segment, and the reason why I picked the Maulers was that last drive. You were down by 7. James Morgan had been in for most of the half, and then you put in Troy Williams on the very last play, or the last drive of the game for some reason. I know Williams had moved the ball a little bit more, but you had stuck with Morgan prior to it. When that happens, you take all the chemistry and rhythm out of your offense that you had building, and Morgan at that point had moved the ball a little bit better. It looked like you guys were kind of getting into a rhythm, and then you just yanked him for some reason and put Troy Williams in. 3 points on offense is dreadful for any level, especially this level. I know there was a lot of turnover and turmoil that happened there. Hopefully you guys get it back, but for this week, that don't impress me much.
Awesome as always. So we're going to go ahead and move right into our last segment of the day, which is always our prediction segment for next week. Last week I was kind of half here, half not here, so I apologize for that. We're going to start with the XFL games, and I'm going to go to Andy first. Andy, what are your thoughts on the Orlando St. Louis Battlehawks game? Who do you think wins that one?
I mean, it would be absolutely shocking if Orlando walked in there and won that game. So I get that they have, as I mentioned, I think they have more talent than what's led on. But, I mean, St. Louis has to win this game. Their backs are against the walls. They have to pull out all the stops to win this game, and I think they will. They'll show the fortitude, the resilience, and the coaching to do so to pull this game out. I think it might be closer than people are expecting, but I do think they will ultimately prevail because they have to go 7-3 and hope to God that Seattle loses later on that day. But I think St. Louis does pull this one out despite what Orlando throws at them.
Do you have a score prediction or no?
I would say give me 23-19 St. Louis.
All right. Sounds good. Pierce, we're going to go to you next. What's your prediction for this game?
So at this point, the Guardians is basically just the chaos team. Like, they have everything they could win a game, and they also have what it takes to lose a game. So it was like so hard to predict if they ever win a game. Like, Defenders, I was like, of course they would be the Defenders as they're undefeated. So I think I won't say they win this game, though. I think Battlehawks should be able to pull it off just enough to be the Guardians. But I think they're probably the safest upset this week, if anybody were to decide over any upset in this week. But I'll go with the Battlehawks for this one.
Do you have a score prediction for us?
No, I've just assumed be close. One score at least.
That's fair. Michael, let's go to you next. What's your prediction in this game?
Battlehawk fans are not going to like this one. St. Louis is going to win and beat Orlando, but they are not going to make the playoffs because they are not going to beat Orlando by the margin of points that they need to. Unfortunately, because like I said, as a DC fan, I'd rather see them than Seattle. But it is not going to be enough because they have to beat Orlando, and it has to be by a margin of over 19, I believe, compared to Seattle's score. So they're playing 2 games here, and they're going to lose one of them. St. Louis will win this game 25-17, but it's not going to be enough.
Mibs, do you have a prediction for us?
Yeah, call is the law. The St. Louis is going to win. It's the Dome. It's last chance to get in. I really think everybody's going to ball out. Everybody is going to ball out. I think this for score wise, I think St. Louis is putting up 37. I think we're going to see the worst of Orlando because if any team, there are only 2 teams that we can trust that they will choke. It's the Vipers and it's the Guardians. The Guardians are going to show their worst because they're going to get down with little to play for, and we will just see the life leave their eyes. So 37-15 Seattle. Not Seattle. This is St. Louis.
That
All
felt like
right.
a WWE intro. That's what it sounded like to me.
I love it. I love it. But I'm going to go with St. Louis as well. I mean, obviously, at this point, how could you not? I'm not going to be as confident as Mibs. Sorry, buddy. I'm going to say 27-18, and I think it'll be doable for St. Louis, but I don't think they're going to win by enough to get themselves in the playoff. Moving on to the next game at hand, we've got DC at San Antonio. Andy, what you got for us?
It's hard to say because if you're DC, you have nothing to play for at this point. You can rest all of your starters. You don't have to risk much going into the next week. So, I mean, it's hard to say. San Antonio, I mean, I know like they technically still have a shot at the playoffs, so they have more to play for in this game than DC does. So, with that said, I think I might have to go San Antonio, not because they're the better team, but because DC is just going to be resting a bunch of guys. We're not going to see Eric Dungy. He's unfortunately on the reserve injured list now. Unfortunately, I was hoping for whatever reason that he would come in and start to do some more things, but sadly that will not be the case. But for DC, I mean, you don't really want to put too many people in there. They can just kind of be in cruise control for this entire game. San Antonio has to win this game. I think they ultimately do. So I guess you'd call it an upset, but it's hard to really call it that when the other team's not really going a full go. So San Antonio, I think they probably win. They don't score so many points, but I'm going to say like 19-17. Like I think it's going to be really close, but I think you know what it is? I think John Parker Romo will hit a game-winning field goal. He's been nails this entire season. That's my prediction.
Bold.
My fantasy kicker, I wrote him to the playoffs and didn't even realize it. Pierce, what was your prediction for this game?
So unlike Andy, I still think even if they set down a lot of the guys, I think that the defenders are better coached, and honestly, just the level they play, I think it's still going to be enough to beat them. Like I wouldn't say it's going to be a bloodshed, but I think for the most part they're going to be able to control the game for the most part. The only concern is, which we discussed earlier, is like Greg Williams, being soft near the second half, which can the Brahmas basically take advantage of that if it happens? I don't think they can. So basically, I expect it to be pretty close. I think they'll be short. I'll go with this one. Defenders, 21, and then they'll be down by 4. So that's, do the math, 17.
That's a fair pick. Michael, what's your prediction for this one?
I don't think DC is going to rest in the sense of the whole game. I think they're going to play their starters in the first half. I think they're going to want to win this game so they have momentum going into next week. Nobody wants to go into the playoffs coming off a loss, regardless if you're resting your starters. So I think that they're going to come out full-fledged in the first half and try to really set the tone for this game and try to get out to a big enough lead that they can then rest their starters in the second half. I think they do want to win this game, and they know that they have a chance. I love San Antonio. They're my second team. They're my team in the South. Again, that's uniform-based more than anything. I would love to see them make the playoffs and boot Arlington's boring-ass offense out, but San Antonio's offense is not much better, and I don't think it's going to be enough, even with that defense. So I'm going to say DC conservatively because they'll probably do that, resting their starter stuff in the second half. But I'll say DC conservatively 26-22. San Antonio might get 22 just because of a softer defense and second string players playing. But I think that they get out to a big enough lead that they're able to control it and still win.
Mibs, what's your prediction for this game?
Yeah, I agree with Michael on the most part. I think the Brahmas win. I really feel like DC doesn't play any of their starters past the second half, regardless of score. If I had to put an even harder cap, I don't think that any starter gets more than 4 series. Come out, come strong, 4 chances, then everybody sits down, stretch the depth of the team. There's just no reason to risk it. and that Brahmas team is fighting for a lot. They have a lot of faith in Hines Ward, like a lot of pride on the defensive side of the ball, especially in that secondary. I think they'll pull it out pretty handily. Final score, I think it's going to be something like 25 Brahmas and then 16 for DC.
Fair enough. 25-16, San Antonio. Interesting. I am also going to go with DC. I personally think they've got too much firepower for any team, even if they're playing most of their backups, quite honestly. I just think that DC is far and away the best team in the league, best coached in the team in the league. And I'm going to go. I kind of really like Pierce's score, 21-17. In fact, he kind of stole it from me when he was talking about it, but that's all right. Let's move on to the next game at hand. We've got the Houston Roughnecks at the Arlington Renegades. Andy, what's your prediction on this one?
For this game, I'm kind of having the opposite thought that I had with my prediction about DC San Antonio. I actually do think Houston's going to play this game really hard. I think they're going to keep a lot of their maybe starters in for momentum's sake. But I mean, look, Arlington will find a way. I think they're going to find a way to win this game. It's not going to be pretty at all. It's going to be butt ugly on offense, but they're going to find a way. Luis Perez, I think, is going to take them into the playoffs. They're going to make enough plays on defense. I think they create some turnovers off Houston because I don't think Houston's offense has been playing very well in the second half of the season. Special teams will make a play. I do see Arlington pulling this one out at home and getting themselves into the playoffs. So I will say my predicted score would be like 22-18 or something. Like, again, a really close score, but I think they're going to do enough on defense to get it done and go in as a 500 team.
Interesting. Pierce, what are your thoughts on this one?
Like Andy said, I think expect this to be pretty much a stinker. The Houston, even though they're basically done, kind of the same deal. You don't want to go into the playoffs with a loss, and they're going to try their hardest. But I think the Renegades are going to want to try to push even harder than they will, just to go off, doing what they got to do from here on out. And they're at home. It's the Renegades. I feel like they're finally going to click. So I am going to go with the Renegades here. And I'm going to go with a 18-21 Taylor Rosalino field goal winner.
All right. Interesting. Michael, what's your prediction?
So this game is going to be, I don't know. It's not going to be good. Arlington still continues to disappoint me. I think they might have hit 20 offensively if you include the 2-point extra point that they got after the defensive touchdown. So maybe it's 18 if you take that away. So they still haven't cracked 20 on the offensive side of things. I don't know. Houston wins this game, I think 23-14. I don't even want to give them that many points. Arlington just has impressed me on offense, and I know that they want to go into the playoffs with momentum, but I think Houston's just going to take it.
All right. And what was that score again? I'm sorry.
I don't know. I mean, 22 and some total below 15. 14,
all right, 22-14.
Yeah.
Nibs, what's your prediction on this one?
Funny enough, Houston and Arlington played in the home opener, and in the first game of the season, and that was the final score was 23-14. So having a repeat would be crazy. But I believe in the Texas rivalries. I think it's one of the coolest things that are coming out of this season. I think it'll be a close game. Lots of pride here. Unlike DC, I don't think they're going to sit players. I don't think they're that good to sit players. I think everybody in Houston needs to play every game. Man, Arlington is just so underwhelming offensively. They really do struggle to top 20. So I think it's going to be close, but I'm thinking it's going to be 14-16 Houston.
Oh my God. Go to none nights on that one.
Yeah, really take a quick nap. I'm going to go with Arlington, actually. I really like how Luis Perez looked last week. And granted, I think it's a lot because of the defense that they played. But I think Houston's going to be – I don't necessarily want to say that they're going to rest a bunch of guys, but I definitely think that they're going to come into this one with a little less sense of an urgency here. And Perez wants to make the playoffs. So they'll get to face each other 2 weeks in a row, and it'll be very interesting. So I'm going to say 21-18 in this game as well. I didn't realize that's Pierce's score as well. Go 21-17. So moving on to the last XFL game, and then basically what we'll do real quick just to speed up the process. Let's go ahead and I'll just go through the group. Everybody can give us their last XFL prediction, and then I'll pull the USFL schedule up, and everybody can just give us all 4 of their USFL predictions real quick. Then we'll get on out of here. But let me pull up the USFL real quick.
Who's our producer? I gotta talk to him. Being unprepared.
Right.
What's going on here?
Can you see that?
What is happening?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So the last XFL game of the weekend is obviously the Vegas Vipers at the Seattle Sea Dragons. So what are your thoughts, Andy, on this one? And then we'll move to the USFL games.
I mean, Seattle better damn well win this game. That's all I'm going to say. They've fought their way through all of this, all the chaos, the turnovers. Jim Haslett saying he's going to murder Ben DiNucci, all the chaos behind the scenes. I keep coming up with a new weapon that he's going to unsheath every time DiNucci throws a pick or fumbles the ball. But look, man, this Seattle team's scary. Their offense is great. I love it. Ja'Cory Pearson had the best run I've ever seen from a receiver in this league, and he was that sprint against St. Louis was magical. They have a lot of offensive weapons. I love what they've been doing. And defense, their defensive lines play better. I know the run defense hasn't been great, but I think they get a lot of pressure. They get timely blitzes. I think they do a lot of good stuff on defense. I'm really excited for the Seattle team. They should win this game, and they will win this game. Vegas might give it their all and might have a really good game plan in the first half, but I think Seattle's going to pull away in the second half. I could see them winning even possibly by double digits. Like I could see it being 30-20. I really think Seattle's going to put up some points, and I think they're going to stamp their ticket into the playoffs.
Interesting. Here's actually, sorry. Let's go through the USFL games real quick.
Yep.
So it looks like the first game of the weekend is the Houston Gamblers at the New Orleans Breakers. Who do you have for this one? Andy first. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. No, it's there's a lot going on here. I like I said, I think that the Breakers are a team an offense that I like. If McLeod Bethel Thompson can keep it going, keep the momentum going, I don't trust this Houston team right now. I just don't. I'm really worried about their defense. I'm worried about them finding anything from the quarterback position right now. Mark Thompson's, if he's questionable, if he can't really be a go. I think this Breakers team is pretty good. I think they are a potential for the title game. Ultimately, I really feel that way down the stretch. I know it's early in the season, but I felt pretty good about them coming to the season. I have to go with them. I think they're still figuring things out on offense. I think they win 23-16, something very similar to the Mahler score.
Fair enough. What about the Showboats and the Stallions?
It really depends if Brady White gets back out there. And for the Showboat's sake, I hope that's not the case. I'm not really a humongous fan of him. He gift wrapped an interception for Channing Stribling. Like I almost think he tried to throw it to him in that game. I think for them, they've got to find a way to, find out what Ryan Willis is made of. I got to figure out what's going on with that because Ryan Willis, I'm surprised, didn't get into that game. It was Cole Kelly instead. So we'll have to see what's going on there. But I have to believe that the Stallions still have it. They're playing at home. They still have most of their roster, even though they had a couple of injuries. I think on defense they'll be fine. I could see them winning kind of a sluggish game, maybe something along the lines of like 20-13. I think they're going to play really good defense against Memphis.
Definitely. That was 20-13, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right, New Jersey Generals and Pittsburgh Maulers. I have a feeling I know which way this one's going.
um, despite the menu change for the Pittsburgh Maulers, I don't think it's going to matter much. But look, I for the Generals, they got to have it's a get right game. They did not come out very well on offense. They came out really flat. Had a lot of costly turnovers. I think they get back on the horse a little bit this game. This is their first game in the Can Hub, basically, and so it's kind of, I mean, for them, it's not really a road game per se, but I'm not sure who's really home and who's away in this situation. It's a little weird. So for them, I think they're going to look okay against Pittsburgh. I think they get their offense going a little bit. I'm predicting a 24 to 13 win. I think they're going to win pretty handily and they'll be in control of the game.
Definitely. It's actually kind of interesting. The New Jersey Generals have played one game at Canton. So Pittsburgh, despite the fact that they're, I believe, the home team, New Jersey's actually played there more often. So kind of interesting. Yeah. Michigan versus Philadelphia. This is going to be an interesting game. This is technically a home game for Philadelphia.
I like the Stars. I mean, Case Cook is, you like what he's cooking, and I like that they have a lot of good receivers. Like, I mean, Chris Rolland, just so dynamic on the field. Matt Colburn looks so fast. I think he looks faster than he did last year. And I believe their offense is just going to do whatever it needs to win this game. I think Panthers can keep up with it too. I mean, if Josh Love puts in another great performance, this could potentially be the best game of the entire weekend. I think it could be a lot of offense here. If this Panthers team is really that improved, this could be one of the better games for this season so far. So I would say, give me. I'm going to go with a bit of a shootout. I'm going to go with Stars 30 and Panthers 27. I know it's a lot of points, but I'm feeling really good about these offenses in this game.
No, honestly, after last week, that's very fair, I would say. Andy, I know you got to get out of here, man. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night. Once again, check out the Wheelhouse Podcast, the Markcast. If you don't know who that is, you should definitely be subscribed to that. Best alt football, which we didn't discuss that, but we'll come up with a better term for that podcast that's out there for sure. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Also check out his articles on XFL and USFL News Hub. Have
Absolutely.
a great night, Andy.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, gentlemen. Always appreciate it.
All right. See you later, man.
Yeah, have a good one.
So let's move on to, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, Sam, why don't we just call it football? That's what it is. It's football.
But
no, but it's football.
But
it's football.
It's football. It's football. There's no. The
all right.
alternative saying it's weird. It's football. I don't get it.
American football. American football.
It's football, man. All right. Sorry.
That's fair. Hey, for the record, a useless guy. You're not useless tonight because I'm tracking all your predictions, just so you know.
Ooh.
And then I was commenting on the wrong one. Boo. You could only comment on everything. If you're commenting on any of them, they would have come up, just so you know. But anyway, let's go to Pierce now. And then is everybody else on a time crunch, or are we cool to work our way back through it?
We can work our way back through it, yeah. Start with the XFL and work our way through. Yeah, useless guy, you're going to be useful guy here tonight. So
yeah, exactly. So the last game of the XFL week was the Seattle Sea Dragons at home versus the Vegas Vipers. Vegas is kind of playing spoiler in this game. So, Pierce, what do you think happens between the Sea Dragons and the Vipers?
Two wild card teams to me, because obviously with Ben DiNucci, you can get really good plays and some very questionable plays. And then the Vipers are obviously kind of flip-flop, like a fish. And honestly, I still think Seattle at home is going to overhaul what Vegas Vipers can put together. And it's just a disappointing team for them. So I'm going to go with a Seattle Dragon win, 26-18.
That sounds exactly like the game's going to go to me in my mind. Michael, what is your prediction on this one?
My prediction, I'll get to that in a second. What I'm hoping for is a complete catastrophic collapse by Seattle. to the point where Ben DiNucci gets benched and they have to bring in the hot dog guy to play quarterback because their quarterbacks are not doing anything, and Vegas wins this game 45-2. That's what I'm hoping for. I really don't want to see them in the playoffs. Seattle scares me offensively. Defensively, I don't know if Defensively, I don't know if Seattle is as scary for the DC team as they are offensively. So that's what I'm hoping for. It's not going to happen, though. I think Seattle's going to win this game. Vegas might actually lead at halftime, but once that second half hits, it's a whole different team, and they just collapse and fall apart anyway. So I think Seattle's going to win this game probably 26-18. I hope for Vegas playing spoiler. The fight for the season, but I don't think they have enough to beat Seattle.
I'm sorry, what was that score again?
26-18 Seattle, and that's probably being generous for Vegas just because I want it to be close.
So totally copying Pierce's score again, but that's okay. Mibs.
Get an original thought, Sam.
Yeah, I'm picking the Vipers. I think they're gonna figure it all out and play a full game, and it's gonna come for their last game of the season.
You're the Battlehawk fan, right?
Unrelated.
Oh, okay, all right.
Vipers are gonna win. I think they put together the full game and give St. Louis a gift on a silver platter. No, but I really think that's always the issue. It's like, will they play a full 4 quarters? Right? I don't think anybody here disagrees that they could have been more successful this year by a lot. The talent was definitely there. So I think they pull it out, Jalen's going to throw for 500 yards, just final score though. I'm going to pick 27-21 Vegas.
Very nice. So in case you guys aren't reading the comments on the chat, I just wanted to throw out there that we are doing a giveaway. If we hit 750 subscribers by the XFL Championship, one lucky subscriber who comments and is subscribed during the championship game will win swag from the XFL team of their choice. So if you are an XFL fan, make sure you're subscribed, and hopefully we can hit that number by this championship game. There's only 3 weeks remaining, so tell your friends, get them to come subscribe. I think we need less than 90 at this point. We can definitely do it in 3 weeks' time, no problem. We just need your help to spread the word. As far as my prediction on this game, I am most likely going to go with Seattle. I rolled with Seattle or St. Louis last week. Shot myself in the foot. That was I think the one prediction out of all 8 games that I got incorrect. So that was kind of unfortunate, but I definitely am rolling with Seattle this week. I think that Ben DiNucci is going to come out and put up 28 points. I think we finally see Steven Montez late in the game because the game's in hand. I see Vegas scoring 21, but I don't see them scoring their 3rd touchdown until late in the game. And I ultimately think they most likely will be behind the entire game. I don't think they'll ever hold the lead. So it's going to be very lopsided, in my opinion. But moving on to the USFL games, we've got the New Jersey Generals, like we spoke about before, versus the Pittsburgh Maulers. Let's go to Pierce.
This is Sunday.
Go up.
Skipping Saturday.
Go up.
Sorry.
Go up. There you are.
Houston Gamblers, New Orleans Breakers. I'm only mildly good at producing, for the record.
Well, for this game, I expect it to be I think bloodshed is a pretty solid term for it. I think the Breakers are still basically one of the best teams out there. And the Gamblers are just kind of like they're all over the place right now. And I expect the Breakers to definitely pull it off. So whether it be MBT, whether it be a cool glass, if people throw them in there, I think this is definitely going to be a game that's going to be good to watch. I'm going to go Breakers 28-13.
Definitely. Michael, what are your thoughts on this game?
Oh man, this game's going to be telling for Houston. I know that the Breakers might be better than Michigan, but they really. This is the Houston needs to come out and make a statement, and I don't think they're going to. This game may not be close. Anthony Jones might have a breakout, dance party of sorts here. This game might end up being something like 33-10. Like I don't. Houston has a lot to figure out. That defense, 2 incomplete passes. So you got to do something in that secondary because MBT will eat you alive. So I unfortunately for Houston, I'm not sure that this is going to be the game that they get back on track. So
You got a score for us?
yeah, 33-10.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not catch that. Mibs, what is your score prediction for this game?
Yeah, no, the Breakers are gonna ball out. Yeah, I think they're gonna ball out. I think they're feeling themselves, which is what I noticed as a Maulers fan. I just watched New Orleans gain all sorts of swagger towards the end of the game, and I think they're just going to keep that going into Houston, who still has a lot to figure out all around the football. For a final score, man, I think it's going to be embarrassing. I think it's going to be like 35-6.
That would be embarrassing. Holy cow.
Yeah,
I
I
think
don't-
Houston has a little bit more in their offense than 6 points, but
They might get a lucky play and
Hmm.
something.
well, so far, all of you guys have them scoring 16 points or less. So I guess I'm going to be the outlier, and I'm going to say they're going to score 18 points, which isn't much more. But I do think they somehow squeeze three scores out of that offense. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to manage. So it's going to be 28-16, or sorry, 18, in my personal opinion. So let's go back up to the Memphis game versus Showboats. Showboats versus the Stallions. I'm sorry.
Memphis is playing themselves in Birmingham.
Yes, they are. They are. So Memphis versus Birmingham. I apologize. It's been a long day, apparently. So what is your pick, Pierce, Memphis or Birmingham?
Well, it's Birmingham. In Birmingham. Showboats. They got some things to show off, but I think they still have some few holes left out, even though I think the Stallions, with their injuries, are still pretty much a well-rounded team. I don't think it's going to be as butchered as, the game before, but I definitely do expect the Stallions to win. If it was my, my great, score would be 69-0, but I know that's not going to happen. So I'm going to keep it low, go 26 Stallions, and then the Showboats are going to go 21.
Not exactly my definition of a low-scoring game, but that's okay. 47 points is quite a bit of points. But Michael, what's your opinion on this one?
Birmingham fans, be weary. I will say that. I think Memphis had a very surprisingly decent debut, or not necessarily a debut, but you know what I mean, home opener. I know this is in Birmingham, but I don't dislike Brady White as much as some other people have. He had a rough, very inconsistent first game, but overall, I think he played well enough in the second half to kind of keep this team together. Memphis could be playing spoiler here. I'm picking Birmingham, but I think this game is going to be a lot closer than people predict. Yeah, I got you. I see you. Don't worry. That's how you're going to have to look at this game, Stallions fan. Right? That's how you're going to have to watch this game, because I think this game is going to be much closer. I think this game is going to be 24-23.
Ooh.
And I think I would not be surprised if Memphis did win this game. I will say that the injuries are a big factor for me. I know
100%.
Magoo looked really good, but not having that option to go to Jamar Smith if he's out, it really predicates on if he's out, and it sounds like he might be. If Magoo doesn't play well, is going to be a huge disadvantage for Birmingham, and not having Marlon Williams is going to be a big hit too. So, unless they can get Bo Scarborough on the on track and really pound the ball with him, this is going to be a much closer game than I think people are really expecting it to be.
That's completely fair. I also think Memphis is getting slept on a little bit this year. I don't think they're quite getting the credit that they deserve quite yet. Mibs, what is your thought on this game?
Yeah, I think just going after Michael all night keeps taking my takes. That's I agree, man. I think it's going to be really close. I think Memphis is a really good football team. I think Memphis is really good. I think they got unlucky. I think they got unlucky with a couple of plays in that Phillies game, but they're a new team. It's okay. I also think, gosh, what's his first name? His last name is Collins. The running back on
Alex Collins.
Alex Collins.
Yep.
I think he's really good.
He's awesome. He's one of my favorite running backs probably in the league.
Right? I think we look up in a few weeks and we're going to be talking about top backs, and his name is going to be on all of our list. So I think this Birmingham game is going to be his breakout game. So it's going to be close, but Alex Collins is going to run for over 100 yards. And I think it's going to be 23-20.
Is that Birmingham or Showboats?
Showboats.
Ooh,
Nice.
Keep your receipts, buddy.
Oh, we are. Don't worry.
We have receipts for days here.
All I'm going to say is if Memphis wins this game, Mibs is going to be the only one picking them, because I am definitely going with Birmingham. I like Alex Magoo. I already know they're going to address the wide receiver position. I love the wide receivers that they've got on the roster outside of Marlon Williams. And I would also point out that they cut a couple receivers this past offseason, which I think are still available and pretty solid guys. One of my guys in particular that I want them to go get is Rico Gafford. I really like him. He plays both ways, so he's really valuable as a back end of the roster guy anyway. But then there's another option out there that a lot of people haven't talked about, but Isaiah Zuber was recently released by the Raiders. Why don't you go get him? We already know he'll play in the USFL.
I want him.
Why not? I mean, yeah, he would be a great addition to this offense, and one of those players that he would be a huge midseason addition. He also actually had an interception in the preseason last year for the NFL, which I thought was kind of interesting. But for Birmingham's score, I'm going to pick a rather low score. I'm going to say they're going to score 18 points. I really like their defense. I think they're going to stuff Memphis. I'm going to say Memphis scores 14. So 18-14 in this game. Birmingham stays undefeated and might go on another run this year. I actually have them as one of the more talented teams in the league. Moving on to the next game, we've got the New Jersey Generals and the Pittsburgh Maulers taking their talents to Canton, which is going to be a very interesting game given that they're both technically calling this their home stadium. So, Pierce, what are your thoughts on this game?
This game could honestly go both ways for me. I think the Generals just have enough weaknesses for the Maulers to attack it. I think the Maulers, this could be the game for them to crack through. So, it's really hard to go into it. I think it really depends on the quarterback play for Pittsburgh to see if they can get anything down, and if the Generals could be able to generate some type of offense for all four quarters. But I think I'm going to go with the upset, or at least what I think is the upset, and go with Pittsburgh. And I'm going to say they're going to win 17-14.
Okay, interesting. I did not see that coming. In fact, I had already written down your pick as New Jersey before you said that out loud. That's kind of funny. So, Michael, what is your prediction on this one?
Oh, Man. What a tough schedule. What a tough schedule on paper for both Pittsburgh and Houston to start the season, huh? Jeez. The Generals looked outmatched in the game against Birmingham. They looked completely out of sorts, and it's a good game to get back on track for the Generals, but I think it's also a tricky game for the Maulers. They need to figure out the quarterback position. I know that not everybody wants to give James Morgan, doesn't want to give them an opportunity or chance or whatever it may be at this point, but I really think they need to make the switch to Troy Williams and let him kind of, cook for a little bit and see what happens, because Morgan didn't really provide enough spark. I know I kind of got on them in my segment for switching from Morgan to Williams, but that was because it was literally the last drive of the game, and you literally did not have a single ounce of rhythm when you do that. So I'm going to go with the Generals here. The Maulers' offense still just doesn't look good enough for me. I don't know if the Maulers even score a touchdown in this game again. I think the Generals are going to win this game like 23-9.
Okay. Dang. Mibs, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. Wow. First of all, I think Pittsburgh's going to win. Just lead with that. I think both teams have very underwhelming offenses. It's been 1 week, but this is not going to be a pretty game. This is going to be like pulling out hairs. It's not going to be fun to watch. Final score is going to be ridiculous. It's going to be 13-9. Nobody's going to have a good time. But Pittsburgh is going to win because they're better on the other sides of the ball, right? They're better defensively. They're better on special teams. And they're going to pull out another score from one of those places. New Jersey, I think they'll just struggle. They will simply struggle like we saw them struggle last week. But it's not going to be an offensive game. No, both these offenses are not good enough for that at this point in time.
Prukop's going to throw for 3 touchdowns.
Whoa.
I would prove me wrong, right? Prove me wrong, but I do not think this is going to be the game where people go, "Oh, did you catch that USFL game this weekend?"
That was more of a wish than it really was a prediction, but
What's your score in this one, Mibs?
Oh, I'm sticking with it, 13-9.
Whew. That's going to be a barn burner for sure. All right, so the last game of the weekend, we've got the Michigan.
Whoa! What about you, Sam? You going Generals? You going Maulers? Come on!
Sorry.
You can't skip over yourself.
I had already written down my pick. I'm going New Jersey Generals, 27-16. I personally, the rumors of the Generals' offense's demise are very overblown, in my personal opinion. They were the top rushing offense in the league last year. Partially because of the fact that Trey Williams and Darius Vito were a great pairing. Trey Williams was not available in week 1. We'll see if he's available in week 2. Even if he's not, I really like Darius Victor. And especially after the performance in week 1 by the Pittsburgh Maulers, I have no faith, especially because I know that if the solution to the pressure that they put on New Orleans was to put in a 6th offensive lineman and run the ball, the Generals will have no hesitation to do that, and they will run the ball down your throat all game long. So 27-16, New Jersey Generals. Sorry, Mibs. I really do like the Maulers. I'm not sure if you caught it. I actually interviewed Ray Horton a couple weeks ago. I think he's a great guy. I wish him nothing but the best, but he will not get his first victory this week, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Pierce, okay, last game of the week. Michigan Panthers, Philadelphia Stars. I think we all are kind of wondering what this one's going to look like. Might be the shootout of the week, in my personal opinion. We saw Andy predict a 30-27 score. So what is your prediction in this score or this game?
So I'm kind of looking at this in a different way. I think the Panthers coming off the Gamblers, correct? I think they kind of just got a really bad team. And I'm not downplaying what Josh Love was able to do or the Panthers were able to do in that game, but I think the Stars are just the better team, and I don't expect it to be a shootout. I think the Panthers will be, I wouldn't say shut down, but it's going to be kind of like a reality check for them. It's like, okay, you're not actually going against a full on team that actually knows what they're doing. So I think the Stars win this game, which pains me to say that because, but I think the Stars beat them. I think Case Cookus throws over 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. So I'll go 31-18.
All right. Interesting. Michael, what's your score for this one?
So this is another one of those games that's going to be telling. I do not think 2 incompletions is going to happen in this one. Philadelphia's secondary is much, much stronger than Houston's. Josh Love is going to come back down to earth. I know there's a lot of people excited for him right now for what happened in that game. Michigan has some weapons. They got their offensive coordinator returning, so there is some continuity there. But overall, I don't think that they have the firepower to compete with Philadelphia. And honestly, I'm not sure that this game is going to be close either. I think that this might end up being something like 28-13 for a score. I think Michigan gets mic checked 1-2-1-2 here, and Philadelphia and Cookus goes off. So
Did you just say 37-14?
28-13.
Oh, sorry.
Mic check 1-2-1-2.
Yeah, apparently. Wow. Mibs, what's your prediction for this one?
Funny enough, Michigan and Philadelphia are 2 of 3 teams that have both scored over 10 points in a single quarter so far. And I say that to say, okay, there is some explosive offensive power, so I will think it will be close on the higher end of the spectrum. That being said, I think Michigan pulls it out. I think they're more consistent from what we saw in Philadelphia last week. More particularly, I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of Love. I'm a big fan of Scott the Third. But all in all, the score I'm going with, I think it's going to be 24-27.
All right. 24-27. And Michigan takes it. Interesting. That will be a bold pick as well because the rest of us are picking Philadelphia. I'm going to go with 32-26 Philadelphia. I do expect Michigan to give us a run for our money. I really think Michigan might be the best improved or the most improved team in the league, especially. I don't want to give all the credit to Josh Love last week, but I do like how he played. I do think it was very encouraging because a lot of times last season he didn't look anywhere near that efficient. Again, a lot of that goes to the defense. So I do think that, you can't necessarily expect a perfect performance out of him every week. But if he can continue to hold off Carson Strong, which I thought would be a lot more difficult than that, it'll be a win for him in my personal opinion. So that'll be interesting going forward.
I didn't realize Michigan had returned their OC until last week. Otherwise, it probably would be Carson Strong. Josh Love just has the advantage of being in the system already and being there. So
100%. 100%. I can tell you for a fact that if Paxton Lynch was still there, regardless of if they signed Carson Strong or not, they would have started Paxton Lynch. Eric Marty, the offensive coordinator for Michigan, loves Paxton Lynch as a person, as a player. So I just happen to know that because we've spoken at length about his affinity for Paxton Lynch. But I personally think Michigan's a great team. I think they're going to be a good team this year. I really think that eventually they're going to rack up a couple wins and they might end up, giving us a run for our money for the North playoff run.
If New Jersey plays like they played in week 1, Michigan can easily sneak into that that playoff spot for sure in the North. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
This week's just going to be telling to me.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's just gonna be very telling because coming off a game against Houston, like, no disrespect to anybody in Houston, no disrespect to any of these teams, including Pittsburgh, but you're unfortunately the way that leagues work is you have your top and you have your bottom. Like somebody has to win, somebody has to lose, and right now it looks like Houston is not going to be very good. Hopefully Curtis Johnson can turn that around and tighten that up a little bit, but this game here is Michigan a step up in competition, going against the runner-up of the league, championship from the year ago. You can come out and make a statement and really show that you belong here in the North, and I just don't know if they have enough to do it at this moment. If this was week 8, maybe we'd be having a different discussion. But right now, at this moment, I just don't know if they have enough.
that's fair. So let's go around the hub real quick. Any final thoughts before we get out of here for the night? This has been a pretty long episode, but a good one. I mean, lots to talk about with the first ever, at least in my lifetime, situation where we see 2 professional paid football leagues going on at the same time as far as outdoor football. Obviously, that happens every year with indoor football, but that's a little bit different spectrum. Pierce, what are any final thoughts for us?
Thank goodness the Stallions are actually a really good team. Otherwise, I would have just died with the Guardians because, oh my God, they don't make it easy. They don't make it easy to watch those games at all. So thank goodness the Stallions are still looking good as they were last year. That's all I have to say.
Hey, that's completely fair. I have to give you some credit for riding with the Guardians all season long, despite the fact that they have looked terrible at times, and they've been honestly at times the laughingstock of the league. But recently, they've played really well. So I mean, that has to give you some encouragement for next season. I mean, I would imagine that Dormandy is looking like the long-term answer quarterback, but we'll see.
Or just slow it back up.
Maybe.
I'm not a believer. Dormady, prove me wrong. I'm not a believer.
That's fair. So let's go to Michael. Michael, any last thoughts for us?
So in 2019, the AAF was around, and the Salt Lake City Stallions uniforms were fantastic. Just a quick thought on that. I saw the Stallions pop up and it made me think of it. I thought they were amazing. Did you see who won the Arena Football Statements prediction for indoor football this week, Sam?
I did not.
Did you happen to catch that? No, there was a 3-way tie at the top. Do you know who was there?
Probably me, you, and Krish.
Out of the 3 of us, it was just me. I went 9-3 this week.
What?
Yeah.
Dang, that's crazy. I was so good the first week I did that.
I just had to brag about that real quick. No, to be honest with you, I don't think we can undersell how important this weekend was for American football, spring football, in general, especially the USFL. We're talking a season 2 kickoff in spring football. The magnitude of what that means and the magnitude of how important that is to gain stability for spring football in general is it's unprecedented, and it needs to be discussed more. I don't feel like we're discussing it more as a whole, as a community. I think we're being petty and talking about attendance and talking about TV ratings and talking about the stuff that each league is extremely happy with, and they're very adamant that they are very happy with it. And it's 2 different approaches that are working for each league, and we need to keep that in mind. This whole XFL versus USFL thing is not it's not healthy, and it's not good to maintain. We should be rooting for both these leagues to succeed. Enough with the merger talk too. Just let these teams let's let these leagues breathe. Just let them breathe. Let them produce. If we get to the point where spring football gets big enough and that you need to, then sure, they'll discuss it or approach it and bring it to the table. But right now, just let them breathe. Stop taking unnecessary shots, USFL. No need to. Just let it go. Like, you guys aren't really competing with each other. This weekend and, a couple of the weekends you might be, but overall, you're not really competing with each other. Just let it go. And just breathe, because this is a great opportunity for the players, and I think that this is something that should be player forward. Both leagues should be player forward, and that's where it should be at the end of the day. I kind of wish that they would both stop. This is a little long-winded than I thought it was going to be, but things keep coming to me. I honestly think that both these leagues should really not focus so much about, next level. Just focus on the guys there. We know what the goal is. We know, at least at this point, that your goal is to try to help these guys get to the next level. Don't let it dominate your broadcast. Just focus on the players for what's happening on the field in the game. Give them the props where they are. Don't talk about where they're going to be next year. Every single one of these broadcasting teams should be talking about them coming back next year at this moment. Like, if they get to the NFL, awesome. Great. But you need to build that brand, and that's where this brand is going to be built from, right? So,
No, 100%.
I would like to see that just be a little bit of a tweak, but other than that, let's just support both these leagues, because it's so important for the players. And the fact that we got a season 2 out of a league is phenomenal, and it's so important. So
100%. Mibs, any final thoughts for us?
Damn, Michael, again. Just reaching into the back of my mind and pulling stuff out.
Sorry, my man.
Yo, I've been saying it all XFL season, and I'll say it all USFL season too. These leagues are fun. They're fun, and when the majority of people only had to choose between watching college ball and watching the NFL, people can have fun in both. They're very different and unique products. And like you said, Michael, we need to just embrace the product that's on the field, because that's how you let yourself have fun. Right? People that don't enjoy college football because they say it's not like the NFL, it's not supposed to be. And I completely agree. I completely agree that they need a new strategic marketing effort. The developmental league tag is going to be more limiting than people like to think it is. These are pro leagues. Let's accept the product on the field and just have fun, because they're playing well. They have great stories behind these players. And for the most part, all of these coaching staffs are good people to root for too. I didn't think we had the USFL last year struggled a little bit with some of the personnels and leadership. I think they've cleaned it up this year, and the XFL has been doing amazing. So that's my final thought. Spring football is a lot of fun if people just let it be fun.
Well said. Well said. I mean, I honestly am a supporter of all football leagues. I mean, even the indoor, all that stuff. Realistically, anything that gives the players a chance to continue their careers is a good thing for me. So I definitely just love to see the fact that we have fans that are so passionate about these leagues. I just wish there was a little bit less fighting and a little bit more coming together to just support both leagues. I recently had a discussion just today on Facebook with a guy that I'm going to leave nameless, but who had some pretty ignorant takes on what the differences between these two leagues are. And when you really boil them down, it all boils down to a different business model, quite frankly. Because when you look at the gameplay, it's remarkably similar. The level of players that you have in both of these leagues are fairly similar. The level of coaching, same thing, fairly similar. When you boil it right down, it's a preference for business model. And if that's really all it is, why are we bashing either league? It's a preference. It's an opinion. It's nothing more than that. You're not right or wrong. That's all it is. It's just a preference. So let's leave it alone. Let's support both these leagues. I managed to watch all 4 games from both leagues this week, plus catch a couple of the post-game press conferences. So if I can do it, I know you guys can too. I recommend checking out YouTube TV, which I'm a huge fan of after this past weekend. You can catch all the XFL games and all the USFL games, as much as a ton of other sports. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. It looks like we got a bunch more subscribers after tonight. So thank you for everybody who tuned in. It looks like a lot of these guys came off Pierce's channel. So thank you. Real quick, Pierce, before we get out of here, how do you know Tom Grossi?
Oh, this is a long one. It's a long story. I don't know how. Do you guys follow the live streams he does?
Occasionally, yeah.
So I believe this was it the game after Mayfield was good with the Rams? It was a Rams game. And I was back home for the winter break. And my mom, she had a crush on him because the Packers fan. And like I was watching him and she started watching him. So I thought it would have been a funny joke if I put some money in saying that my mom had a crush on him. And so it created a whole thing. It's a video. I think he put a video up. But basically everybody started talking about how he's a cougar hunter and all that stuff. And like basically me and my mom are well known in the Grossi Posse community now with that whole thing. So I was on the Discord. I said like, hey, I'm going to be on a show tonight. It would be cool if people showed up. And I had no idea that Tom Grossi was going to show up tonight. So that was a cool surprise.
Super cool. Well, thank you for sharing this out. First of all, thank you for showing up. We really appreciate it. Also, if you have not subscribed to Pierce Sports Productions, please do, because this this gentleman below me makes some amazing videos. I apologize. I don't mean to mention you as a kid. You're very much an adult. So
I'm pretty young into this football thing. So
still, you're doing some great work.
So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I consider myself very lucky to surround myself with some very intelligent and talented people of all ages, young, old. I don't discriminate based on that. It's based on your knowledge, your passion, and you obviously have lots of both. So thank you so much for lending it to us tonight. Mibs, thank you so much for your contribution tonight. I always love speaking football with you. You are easily one of the most intelligent and knowledgeable people that I know. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you have not followed him on Twitter, it's Worst Tandem Out. What's the handle?
The @ is Worst Tandem Out.
Perfect. Okay, so Worst Tandem Out on Twitter, @ Worst Tandem Out on Twitter, just to be specific. Definitely go follow him right now. You want to make sure you're checking out all his content. And then if you haven't done so already, both Mibs and I frequent a show on Twitter called Patrick's Happy Hour every weekday, about 3 p.m. My time. I think it's 5 p.m. Eastern. So right about the time everybody gets off work, and we talk about every sport. One quick last little bit of information. If you haven't checked these out yet, we got some Shady Sports Network merch. So shadysportsnetwork.com/shop. You can check that out now. And then I'll leave you with a quick commercial/promotional video for what we do. And then we're going to get out of here. Have a great night. Thank you for all the support. And it was a pleasure speaking with all you gentlemen tonight. Thank you so much.
This is Brett, and you're watching Shady Sports Network. Tune in, hit that like button.
You might wonder, what do these guys do? Player signing announcements. I never in a million years thought you would actually come on to break this news. So without further ado, go ahead and tell everybody what happened today.
Yeah, man. I just had a workout with the Cincinnati Bengals. Signing me right out.
Without further ado, I'd like to announce that, I'll be taking my talents to Salina Liberty.
This just in, The Major League of Football is reportedly collapsing, unable to pay hotel room bills, with players being kicked out of their rooms and hotel managers asking them to leave voluntarily without issue.
And then we got Lions wide receiver Williams is debuting this week as a starter. That's something to look at as far as the eye test goes. And then another one on the eye test is Mostert might be coming back to Miami. And we can see if he has a role in this offense and see if he can be viable for the next couple weeks coming and help us in the playoffs and possibly towards a championship. That would be very nice because he's sitting on my bench right now.